All right, thank you for staying with the Citizen TV tonight. We're talking about the issues to do with cost of living. Let's see some of the proposals that are in the finance bill so that we move on to regulation of churches. One of them, another one there, is 35% tax for those who earn more than 500,000 shillings. The list doesn't end there. There's 5% excise duty for wigs, human hair, false beards, eyebrows and lashes, imported cellular phones, imported fish, powdered juice, and imported paints, 5% levy. Another one, previously there was 1% on sales above $1 million as a turnover tax. Now it's proposed 3%, gross sales above $500,000. Digital tax will be at 15% withholding tax for digital content creators, and also allowance of taxation on per diems, about 30% of it. And then there's the fuel levy that has now been restored to 16% excise duty. So, Archbishop, these are all geared towards promises that were made that things would be better in this country, and therefore they need to get revenue to make things better. What is wrong with this? Because you called this taxation irresponsible.
You know, we have to differentiate the time we were making promises to win a campaign from now facing the reality. And I know both parts of the coalition had these very big promises that, you know, the imaginations of Kenya was after whoever wins the election, by October last year or January this year, Kenya will look like a paradise. But now the reality dawns. And I remember we did remind Kenyans that know that the promises that are being made may not be a reality in their entirety. Some can go through, but not everything promised is going to work out, because the realities were indicating that it's not going to be possible. So, in my honest view, if, you know, I am, you know, part of the leadership that was making those promises, and now I'm facing the what I would have done is to say, look, Kenyans, yes, we did make a lot of promises. We, you know, in a campaign trail, we wanted to win an election. We had high hopes, but when now we came in, the reality is this. We have debts to pay. And it's not small debts. Actually, they are taking a bigger chunk of collected revenue. And as they continue to mature, we are going to be paying over 50% of what is collected in taxes. So what's remaining is what we are now going to jumble between managing, you know, projects, development projects, and managing recurrent expenditure like salaries, and also essential services like buying drugs in our hospitals and dispensaries across the country. So when that reality now dawns, I think our leaders need enough courage to come and tell Kenyans, look, we had these big promises, but the economy cannot allow us to fulfill at the time. Let us now set our priorities right. Let us face what is real, and we live within our means, because, you know, if we look at ourselves against other economies, the economies or even of the development partners that we normally have, the economies are dwindling. Look at what happened to Britain and Brexit. You know, American banks are closing. So if these are our development partners that we used to run to, and they're also suffering the way we are suffering, you know, with the war in Ukraine notwithstanding, with the earthquake in Turkey and Syria, that have taken a lot of developmental resources from countries that used to support us with development funding to those countries because of that devastation. So I think to face the reality is what now we need, courage, to face the reality and say, look, we made these promises with anticipation. Yeah. Now the reality is that anticipation is not our reality. Let us face our reality. Let us cut on cost. Yeah. Let us now delay some of the promises that we have made, so that we don't rush everything to put on taxation, to raise money to be able to deliver the promises at the expense of who are we going to burden. Okay. You know, there is only enough load a doggy can carry. If you overload it, it will crash.
As we end up on this discussion, will the Anglican Church be giving a memorandum to Parliament? Because people have until the 20th to submit their views on the finance.
Actually, what we proposed yesterday in the House of Bishops is that the finance bill needs to go through heavy public participation. And I think it should be opened up and given time that we all participate. And we are not saying in its entirety that we stop everything so that the government cannot run or cannot form a budget. All what we are saying is let us scrutinize that bill so that we say, let the government put aside what is not a priority and carry forward what is a priority. Okay. So we are not saying in its entirety it should crash because, you know, government cannot stop and hold things. But we're saying, can we sit and say, scrutinize what can we put aside in terms of cost cutting, what can we save? Can government also show by, you know, example that we have demonstrated, we have cut this expenditure from government spending, we have cut this and that, so that when we are passing that bill, we have already removed that which is not of priority now, not that it's not important, but it's not of priority now, and say, put it aside until we grow the economy, we stabilize the inflation, because now with the high cost of inflation, it is very hard to carry forward some of these things. Okay. Stabilize the inflation, then later on, we can pick on things that we have put aside.
All right. Sheikh, will you be submitting any memorandum to the National Assembly?
Of course, as the Muslim, we're going to submit our position to the National Assembly. We are part and parcel of this country, and whatever is passed by Parliament affects us. So we will be doing that.
What will you be recommending?
Number one, we want, as the Archbishop said, we want the people at the leadership of the country to face the reality. Yes, they made a lot of promises. The expectations of the people are very high there. But that was during the campaigns. Now we are facing the realities. Let them own up. If I was the president of this country, I would come up and tell the people of Kenya, ndugu zanguni, I promised A, B, C. But certain things cannot be done overnight. The realistic way of doing things is, let us look at our priority. And you know, priority number one, if I was the president of Kenya, can we live within our means? Can we cut down our expenditure? And that shows the goodwill. Own up to the reality, talk to the people of Kenya, tell them this is what they are. Because you see, one could be tempted to say, I want to deliver the promises I gave Kenyans, but at what price? Okay. It could be at the price of some people going without basic necessities in this country. Okay. So this is the kind of memorandum that we are going to give out there. All
right. Father Mutia, let's shift this conversation now to the regulations of the churches, and I'd like to hear from all of you, but I'll start with you. The Attorney General, Justin Muturi, says that there are some amendments, and they're soon coming, to the Societies Act to introduce very tough rules and regulations for churches. Do you support these amendments, and what should they look like?
Well, thank you, Trevor, for that question. It is true that these regulations were passed in 1969, so to some extent they are outdated. Some review needs to be done. And so therefore, we welcome the regulations. But it should not be done out of context. You know, there should be something that informs the decisions that are made. And then you cannot do things, you know, without those that are going to be affected. I mean, you know, we do not say no to these regulations, but allow us also to participate. Allow us also to give our way of thinking. You know, matters of spirituality are not like the politics of the day. I mean, you cannot compare both. We have doctrinal issues, we have practices that every other church does. Yeah. And so therefore, yes, there is need for some review, but you know, when you say they are going to be hard, yeah. I mean, you know, it puts you in a very confused way of thinking, because at the beginning you are telling me it's like you are taking time now to punish me for the wrongs that have been happening. It's not a moment to punish. It's a moment to sit down and discuss. Let's dialogue. Let's see what works, what has worked since 1968 up to now, and what are the gaps that are being, you know, that are seen, and how do we bridge these gaps, but not punitive.
It's not supposed to be punitive, but you're the chairperson of the Interreligious Council of Kenya. Do you think you share some blame for what happened in Shakahola? We didn't hear you say anything.
Well, we all take the blame, because if I were to be asked, you know, I personally am in touch with the religious leadership, yes, but there are things that I have no control over. You know, there are things that every other religious grouping has the autonomy to do whatever they want, and the government, you know, has the mandate to look at what is happening through the Regulation Act. But again, Trevor, tell me, even when you are blaming or pointing your finger at me, I would ask, in that village where there are no, you know, believers or you know, elders, where were the sub-chief? Was the chief not there? Where is the government intelligence? You know, some of these things, you know, they are so much, and it's, as we console with the families, but it is very, very, you know, discomforting to hear of what has been happening in the name of God. But again, this man came out to say he's not a pastor. So he has been using the name, you know, well, we say he's a criminal, yeah, because these acts are not, you know, done by religious leaders. Okay. So what I have to say is, yes, everybody is in. We cannot point fingers at a particular person. Let's own that this has happened. The citizens were there. The leadership has been there. And we cannot blame any one institution and say, you were not, you know, alert. Everybody has to come in and say, a share, yeah, take a share of the blame.
Reverend Dede, what do you make of these regulations that are coming your way? What form should they take? And do you think the clergy share some level of blame for what's happening in Shakahola? Because, yes, like Father Muti is saying that, yes, these people sometimes are not pastors, but you're aware that there are some things that happen and you should raise it and say, this person is speaking about this in the name of God. This is not what we subscribe to. It is wrong.
Thank you, Trevor. I think it's very unfortunate, the incidents that took place in Shakahola, and the fact that it seems like it has been going on for a few years, 3-4 years, and no one had taken note of it at all. I only got to hear of it, I think 2 months ago, when the first 2 babies were being mentioned. That's the first time I heard about it, and that very Monday, I gave a statement through our media house. And it's interesting that that did take place for that long. So when the government wants to regulate the way the Attorney General mentioned, he is pointing out some issues. I think he pointed out the issue of structure of accountability for churches, that churches need to have some structures of accountability. He also pointed out leaders need to be theologically trained, so that before the organizations are registered. I am aware that that's going on right now at the Registrar of Society, that when you are registering a new church, you've got to give a certificate or diploma or something that shows the leader is actually someone who is theologically qualified. I'm aware that they also require you to hand in a constitution, which shows you have some kind of a structure or not. I think the important thing is that the kind of problem we had in Shakahola, you would not find that kind of problem in more traditional churches that have structures. Like the Anglican Church, the Catholic Church, maybe even CITAM and a few others, the IOC. You may not find it in those because they are very good structures of accountability for all their ministers. What's happening here are individuals, and individuals who become, if I may use the phrase, instead of being the shepherds of the sheep, of the flock, they're actually fleecing the flock rather than shepherding the flock. And so they turn out to be criminal. Now, what needs to happen, perhaps in my view, is that there needs to be broader discussion, and I'm glad there is a commission that has been set up to look into this. There needs to be broader consultation so that the various churches and religious groups can come together and come up with some documentations for self-regulation, which they can hand over to the government, and they'll tell the government, if we don't, anyone who doesn't act according to this, you are free to deal with them according to the laws of Kenya. That way, there is a measure of self-regulation, and also at the same time, you bring in the government in terms of taming people who may seem to be turning rogue. I think that may be an excellent idea and way of going around it. Are we guilty? I think in as far as if we knew this was going on and we were not saying something about it, I think we would be held culpable. But most of us, for some strange reason, never heard of this at all until now.
But Archbishop, how do you think we ended up in Shakahola?
I will begin by saying, historically, religion has been used by individuals to either, propagate teachings that are individualized and propagate, because matters of religion and faith is very hard at face value to define. Because somebody says, this is how I believe. And it takes time for somebody to be challenged. Then the way you believe and the way you are practicing is not right. So Christianity and Islam has been taken advantage by people who are extremists. That's how cultic, practices has been developed. And they all border around religion because, when you want to steal somebody's mind and somebody's heart, you must bring a kind of a deity or a superpower or supernatural power that confuses a person, and you steal the mind and you steal the heart. That's what Jesus warned against in John chapter 10, verse 10, that the thief comes to steal, to kill, and to destroy, but I've come to give life and give it in abundance. So people who had ill motives and intention always find religion an easier passage through. Because when you begin by telling people, of that supernatural power, that capacity beyond the human realm, you completely mesmerize their minds, and you steal their minds and you steal their hearts. And then you can do whatever you want to do with the people. And therefore, I can say, religion has been used in that aspect. Now, as where the church feel, are we guilty or not guilty? Yes, we are guilty. As a nation is guilty, because this has gone on for a long time. I have a diocese in Malindi, with churches in Kilifi, and every other religion has, presence in that area. How we have not ever been able to detect, I don't know. We have government systems in those places, the local chief, the village elders, the Nyumba Kumi, the Wazewa Amani in that village. So the question has been, what has happened? But, when you look at this Shakahola case, now information is coming out that even some leaders confronted it. It has been mentioned many times that Aisha Juma confronted Mackenzie sometimes. He has been apprehended by, the law enforcers because of, barring children from going to school through the children ministry. He has been, apprehended by the Ministry of Health by refusing people to go to hospital. So why has he been, caught and then released, to continue the same? So I think there is a way in which, systems are paralyzed or compromised. And, now in Kenya, with the use of money, you can get away with anything. So I think we all need to own up and say, it is something that has taken us, at a bang, and we are shocked. So we must now come out of the shock and face the reality, but not be emotional about it. And I want to urge the government and us, even in in this journey of regulation, let us not be emotional about it. Because when we act with emotions, we will not get to the root cause. Let us now be sober, dissect, look at the criminality. Some bodies are being said their body parts missing. Is this a business or of selling body parts? Let's get to the bottom of the matter. Then now ask ourselves, how do we deal with it? And not just, he could not have come through religion. He could have come through another avenue. But this time he came through religion. Let's ask ourselves, how do we prevent going forward?
Sheikh, what kind of regulation should be there? And should the churches take some level of blame for what happened?
You see now, let us correct the language. When you keep on saying the church, you're leaving me out. Just say religious institutions. Let's talk about religious institutions. I agree, yes, they should be regulated. And like the bishop said, the Archbishop said here, You know, religion is so powerful. It's so powerful because it is very emotive, and to many people, it's unquestionable. And then it promises reward beyond this world, out there. Yeah. Has something gone wrong? Yes. Has religion been misused? Yes. And in the history of humanity, there are so many incidences where religion has been misused. We are still dealing with the issue of radicalization into violent extremism and terrorism, where religion has been misused. And in this case, Islam. This is a clear case of religion being misused. So what we need to do, is it to react or to intervene? I will say, let us not react. And the language being used by the Attorney General, I would beg to differ with him and tell him, don't talk about very hard laws or punitive measures, well thought out regulations. Because Trevor, when there is a wrong and you want to correct the wrong, you do not correct a wrong by creating a bigger wrong. We should now sit down, think very carefully, because we are dealing with a very emotive thing, religion here. And remember, we are not homogeneous. We are different. So we have to be sensitive to the needs of each religious community, but then we need regulations. If you look at our Constitution, freedom of religion is one of the basic rights that we have in the Constitution. But I want to say it very clearly here. Every freedom has limitations. We do not have a freedom or a right that is absolute, because it's a human nature is that if you're not regulated or you're not self-regulated, there are chances that you're going to exceed your limits. We always have these elements that we would want to misuse and mislead people in the name of God. So what we need to do now, for those who are in violation of the law, because there is a clear violation of the law, there is a criminal act in this, they should face the full force of the law. And to avoid such things recurring again, because there is a likelihood of somebody else taking advantage. And you can see now we are discovering a lot of things. We are unearthing a lot of other people who are misusing religion. To avoid such a thing happening, that's why we have to think long term. And for us to come up with regulations that can stand the test of time, they should be well thought out, involve the stakeholders. And who are the stakeholders? The religious leaders in the country. Yeah. But regulations, yes, we need them. Reaction, no. Well thought out interventions.
Okay, let me take a quick break, then come back and still have one more topic, talk about national dialogue position on the religious leaders, but there's still one more issue we'll tackle right after this. All right, keep your views coming. We'll sample some of them. 22422 is the SMS line. Tell us your name and where you're texting from. I see some of them here. I'll be posing them to the religious leaders who are with me here in studio. Also, Trevor Mbija at Crescent TV Kenya. Use the hashtag tonight. See you in just a bit.